record. Awesome. Okay, so I'm starting again. There we go. So this is, so those are the 5 questions. Where do these medicines come from? Are they safe? How do they work? Can these help with addiction, depression, trauma? And is this treatment right for me? So a little bit about me. There's my beautiful family. I have 4 daughters. They're all in their 20s. My wife is an elementary school teacher for 30 years and is a registered clinical therapist. And then that's a picture of a beautiful mushroom that I took a picture of in Chilliwack, just about 20 minutes from my house here, by Chilliwack, by the Chilliwack Lake. And this is a psychedelic occurring mushroom. And there's lots of psychedelic mushrooms that are that naturally grow in the Lower Mainland, and including Liberty caps, which I have had and tried before. And so that's that's a little bit about me. And I just want to talk a little bit about how I got into psychedelics, because that's a huge question, right? Of how did I first get into this kind of conversation and navigating the waters with psychedelics. And it was actually my oldest daughter, in the middle there, third from the left. Her name is Milan, and she's a massage therapist, and she's given me permission to tell this story. And Milan has Crohn's disease, and it's a really debilitating, painful, chronic disease with no cure. And when we were trying to figure out how to navigate this as parents of a teenager, and it was really, really hard for her in high school. And we, one night she came into our room and said, "Mom and Dad, I got to tell you something." And we could tell, like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And yeah, mind you, this is 12 years ago, right? So this is, well, almost 12 years ago now. She said, I did my own research and I've read a lot of books. And last night I took a high dose of psilocybin mushrooms on my own with a guide. And I had a really profound experience, and I met the divine, and I have a completely new relationship with my body and my disease and my pain. And as a dad, when you watch your kids suffer, and then they, my first response was like, oh, you did what? You took drugs? You did what? Like, I kind of was a little bit freaking out, but then I could see what it did for her in this profound experience. And I was like, the first reaction was like, I leaned in and like, honey, tell me more. I was curious, and I was really curious on what the downline was going to be for a person like this, a young 16-year-old, right, on their own, taking mushrooms and having this kind of experience. And I didn't know anything about psychedelics at all. Like, this was brand new to me. And yet what happened after that was I began to see the changes in her life, her ability to reframe things, her ability to step back from herself, from her pain, from her, her disease, and have a different relationship. And that was such a profound experience that our whole family began to kind of understand that there's something powerful in these natural plants that I'd never heard of before. And so that was my first encounter with psychedelics. And it wouldn't be then till probably about 5-6 years later that my friend, who's a therapist, and we both started to research this in pretty big, pretty lot of depth. And this is about 2015, 2016. We really could see that the literature coming out of places like Johns Hopkins, NYU, UCLA, they were doing some research with this, and it was really interesting. And I was like, I want to explore this, and I want to have my own experience. And so that's kind of been our journey. And I did have my first experience with high dose psilocybin mushrooms about 6-7 years ago now, and it was profound and radically changed my life. And I'll go into that a little bit later on in the presentation, how it impacted my ADHD, my struggle with ADHD, how it navigated some deep shame from my past and helped me really unlock from that, helped me be more present with my family and my wife. and it really turned on kind of a spiritual hunger in me that had been really dormant for about 20 years. And so those were just some of my own experiences. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's a little bit about me and my family. Um, so I'm just going to, so this is, I put this picture up because um, psychedelics have been used for over 10,000 years, and people, there's actually quite a few theories out there that would say that the way that our species has actually evolved was that we evolved alongside of psychedelic mushrooms, that we began to eat them and have profound experiences even prior to language development. And there's some really interesting archaeological and linguistic research being done on what happens in the brain when you have these high dose experiences and the images and insights that you can gain. And many people argue that it was our species' ability to be cooperative and our ability to have these altered state experiences using these psychoactive plants that led to our thriving as a species. We weren't the strongest, we weren't the smartest, but we were cooperative and we had access to these plants. We began to use them. This is from a cave painting, cave rock art that depicts kind of a shaman-like character with mushrooms all around. This is about 10,000 years old. And so we begin to see some of the earliest human art forms are representing some of these psychedelic plants that we see in all over the world. This is a place called Eleusis in just outside of Greece, about 30 kilometers west of Greece. I visited there this summer. The temple at Eleusis it housed the largest gathering of psychedelic use we know of anywhere in the world. This temple was it's been changed, but it was operational at least 1800 BC. We have evidence of that, and we have archaeological evidence. And I visited that site this summer and had a private tour with the lead archaeologist there, explaining what was happening at the Temple of Eleusis. Now, this temple, I won't go into a lot of detail, but this temple, for one time of year, anyone who was a Greek citizen could partake in these, what they call the mysteries. And this was a 9-day festival that culminated in going into this dark temple and drinking a drink called the kukion, which we now understand was a psychedelic mixture that was using ergot mushrooms. And this has been synthesized by scientists later, and we have record now that up to 5,000 people would come into this temple to have a group psychedelic experience that would last about 12 hours, and they would emerge out of the temple the next day with a completely renewed sense of who they are. And the idea behind this practice was that you would face your own mortality while you're still alive in this process. And if that you could face your own mortality in this kind of altered state experience, then you could, this would be incredibly helpful for you as a human being. And so there's lots on Eleusis, and I won't go in, we can go into more detail, but just to say, this was over 2,000 years of uninterrupted psychedelic use by the most advanced society of its time at the time. Now, I mean, we're talking about Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, all going to Eleusis and talking about their experiences. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperors would make their way. Slave or free, everyone, male, female, could have access to Eleusis for this altered state experience. It wasn't a religion. It was a mystical experience. You didn't have to believe anything. There was no dogma. It was an experience that you had directly with the divine for 2,000 years. And a Christian emperor, Theodosius, outlawed this practice and tore the temple down and said he did not want people to have direct access to the divine. They needed to go through a male priest from now on if they wanted access to divine, which is such a tragedy. So this ended in 300 AD. The next site that I want to talk about in a history of psychedelics is Albert Hofmann. who discovered LSD. And LSD is from the ergot mushroom, and they was able to synthesize this. Now, the story, which is really quite interesting, is that he was working at Sandoz Laboratory. This is me in Basel, Switzerland. Um, going to the lab where he worked, and I was able to go there this summer and visit the site. Albert Hofmann synthesized this substance that he was working on, accidentally got some on his hands, and at such a high dose, he began to have this altered state experience that he didn't understand. He knew he had to get home. The roads were closed. It was wartime, and so he had to take his bike. And so in 1943, in April, he rode his bike home on an incredible high dose of LSD as the first person to take LSD ever in the world. And I actually recreated that. They have a route that Albert Hofmann took from the Sandoz Laboratory in Basel to his home, and you can kind of bike that route in memory of Albert Hofmann discovering LSD in 1943. So I did that, and so I wasn't on LSD, but it was still fun. So that's 1943. And that really launched, like, Albert Hofmann's work in psychedelics is absolutely crucial because it was Hofmann's ability to synthesize these materials and understand them that then led to other discoveries of usage. This is me in Oaxaca, Mexico, southern Mexico, in the state where this lady named Maria Sabina, she was a priestess in the Mazatec First Nations community there in Mexico. And they had an ancient practice that went back at least 500 years of using sacred mushrooms in a religious ceremony. And they would use mushrooms for healing, for connection. She was a priestess in this. It was a syncretic religion, which meant that it was drawing from indigenous practices and kind of Christian practices that they had inherited from the Spanish, who had come over there in the 14th, 15th century. So Maria Sabina, in the 1950s, was Albert Hofmann and a couple of others went down to visit. They had heard of this sacred mushroom being used, and they wanted to understand, is this similar to the LSD that we synthesized? And sure enough, Hofmann was able to take some of the mushrooms that she was using, synthesize them, and Hofmann named it psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in these mushrooms that was producing the hallucinations or these altered state experiences that Maria Sabina was doing. Well, that led to an incredible outpouring of research in the late 50s and 60s into Harvard and other places where these molecules were being looked at and tested. And one of the key places in the world, which is really fascinating, is Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan. You kind of have to understand why Saskatchewan, right? Like, what of all places in the world, why has Saskatchewan has the leading research on psychedelics? Well, no, two reasons. One, there were some really interesting scientists working there. But more than that, Canada had just from what we call the CCF, this is early NDP, the CCF had brought into Canada the idea from Diefenbaker of a generalized socialized healthcare. And so if the entire country was going to have access to healthcare, regardless of whether you're rich or poor, then what are we going to do with our mental health patients? Because it's really expensive to house them, to keep them in these insane asylums, in that madhouse, as they used to call them. And so Canada really began to look at research to say, what can we do? Rather than locking them up, which is really expensive, is there a way to treat them? And so we Canadian researchers began to use LSD on some of these really big mental disorders that they were being challenged with in the 50s and 60s. And they really started using it for things like alcohol use disorder, which was really rampant. People coming out of World War II with huge PTSD, and the alcohol use was just off the chart as a way to suppress all of the pain and trauma that was coming up from the guys coming back from the war. And they began to use LSD, and it was incredibly effective. And so a guy named Humphrey Osmond, it coined the term psychedelic. So he's a Canadian, which means mind manifesting. So it's a Canadian that came up with the word psychedelic that we use now in a lot of the literature. Um, Research got absolutely halted in 1971 on June 17th. Richard Nixon declared war on drugs, and he made every drug, including psilocybin mushrooms and LSD, a Schedule 1 narcotic, which was punishable by life in prison if you were caught using it or having it or anything like this. And sadly, all of these researchers that were working so hard in the 1960s, opening up clinics, we're so excited to actually maybe we could help with major mental health disorders. All of that was shut down. The research was sealed, and it made illegal to even do research using these molecules. And so I grew up, I was born in 1970. I grew up with this ad here, which you might have, if you've ever seen, Nancy Reagan. This is from 1981, I think, which is, "This is your brain on drugs." It's like a fried egg. You are going to wreck your brain. If you do any drugs, your brain is going to be fried and you'll never be the same. Now, that lie was fed to millions and millions and millions of people. And we are still in the aftermath of this war on drugs mentality. And it was, if we want to go into a lot of the research around it, it was racist. It was a way for Nixon's government to target poor ethnic communities and to criminalize them and to put them in jail. And so this was a racist policy, and it was a lie. And so sadly, this put all the research that we had gained insight from, all of it got stopped. And it was a real tragic part of the story. And so everything kind of goes dormant for, almost 40 years. And it wasn't really until Johns Hopkins asked in about 1998, they asked for an FDA special license to do research and open up research on psychedelics. And so they started doing research in the 2000s on psychedelics, and particularly looking at psilocybin-containing mushrooms as their kind of target of study. And so I'm going to pivot. I'm going to stop there and just look at, before we get into more of the research that came out since 2000, I want to just put up this chart up here, because this is a really important one. This is by Dr. David Nutt, who in the Lancet kind of published this, basically a list of drugs with harm attached to them, and looking at harm to others, harm to users, in kind of a scale he created here. Alcohol being the #1 harmful drug that we have on our planet, cause more harm to the individual, to the brain, to others. It's absolutely deadly, and yet our entire planet is addicted to it. Just below that is heroin, and then crack cocaine, methamphetamines, cocaine, tobacco. Way down at the bottom is mushrooms, right? You cannot overdose on mushrooms. It's impossible. It's a natural occurring substance. You may just go to sleep, but you will not, it won't harm you in any kind of way at any kind of dose. And so just kind of give you a perspective on, the toxicity is really not the issue. It's the other factors that can come up psychologically that really is the kind of that we have to look at for safety protocol. These are two books that, for me, really shifted my thinking on, one is on psychedelics, Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, which was really, it was a New York Times bestseller, and it really began to wake people up to the potential of what psychedelics could be to our modern world. And so it's, the subtitle is What the New Science of Psychedelics Teaches Us About Consciousness, Dying, Addiction, Depression, and Transcendence. And so if you've not read that book, I want to recommend Michael Pollan's book as a really great primer and a starting place. But the other book I want to recommend here, which is not about psychedelics at all, it has nothing to do with plant medicine. However, it was really crucial for me to understand what was happening in our culture, why were so many people depressed? Why were so many people taking SSRIs and these kind of anti-depression medications, these anti-anxiety medications? How did we get from, like, in 1988, almost, no one is taking them, to we're on hundreds of millions of people are taking these every day, these pills, and it's a billions of dollar industry. And Johann Hari's book, Lost Connections, does a brilliant job of telling that story about why you're depressed and how to find hope. And as it really looks at the journey of kind of these pharmaceuticals as the way to deal with what he's arguing here, which I totally agree, is the fact that we're lost connection to each other. And so this is a really important kind of piece to understand. What he means by lost connections is that he is saying that in our culture, we no longer have these places where we can connect with one another. Our churches are losing individuals. Our families are fragmenting. Our marriages are falling apart. And what happens is people are just alone. And it's the crisis of loneliness and isolation that is really leading to the mental health crisis that we're finding in the world. And he says in the book, it's not that we don't have people we watch games with or we work with, but we no longer have people in our life that we can tell the real truth about our life. And so the only people that kind of get access to that is our therapist, right? So the idea that we used to have families and connections that would help people, connect with one another is no longer happening, right? And so that is, that's a powerful book called Lost Connections that I really want to recommend here. So I want to just see if I can help someone get into this. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get one more person in here. There. Someone just came in, and I'm going to see if I can help them. So this is, I'm going to have to just unlock that screen. I can't do everything here, apparently. Yeah, there we go. So this is an incredible, this is an incredible quote here. This comes from the American Association of Medical Schools. This was from about 2022. And this was from one of their research publications. It says, can psychedelics, which were once banned, help relieve mental illness? Decades after most hallucinogens were outlawed as dangerous, researchers are using them to treat disorders like PTSD, depression, and addiction. Still a mystery. How do they actually work? And I just thought that was a great kind of lead in to looking at the mechanism of action of how these psychedelic medicines actually work. And so when we look at places like Johns Hopkins and other universities, there's actually 140 universities around the world currently, right now, doing research with psychedelics, 140 universities. So this is coming on the scene rapidly over the last 5 to 10 years. And so we're going to walk through the three understandings of what goes on when you consume a psychedelic, what actually happens. So first of all, the first thing is, I hope you can see that, is this is an image done by Dr. Robin Cartwright Harris. This is a brain imaging scan. So on the left, you have what's called it's placebo. This is just your normal brain connections. The color are different regions of your brain, right? This is a normal brain, just in a normal, non-altered state. On the right is what happens when you take psilocybin. That's the psychoactive component in magic mushrooms, in mushrooms. And so what happens is you have an absolute burst of connectivity. You have new pathways that begin to start lighting up all over the brain. Pathways that weren't ever kind of lit up before start communicating one to another. And so now that you're like, oh, that looks kind of cool as a visual, but what does that actually mean in real life? Well, scientists talk about something called the default mode network. This is this region of our brain that allows us to do the kind of thinking and talking and analyzing that I'm doing right now, right? We need our default mode network. And in the default mode network, that keeps us busy and engaging and talking and these kinds of things. But when we get on psychedelics, that default mode network begins to actually drop away as the primary place of blood flow. And we begin to have other ways, other patterns of connection in our brain. And that allows us to have new insights, new aha moments. And what happens is, just to get into the biology of it, we have receptors in our brain called the 5-HT2A receptors, and they're serotonin, and then serotonin will bind into that neurotransmitter. Psilocybin acts like serotonin in that it binds into these 5-HT2A receptors in our brain, and it begins to, when that kind of, those synapses kind of make these conjunctive connections, these are these moments we can have these aha moments of recognition, of understanding our life, of understanding maybe trauma. And so we're recognizing that these new pathways open us up to new ways of thinking about our life. And that's a really interesting, because we can be stuck in patterns for decades, and we just be saying, we get in these therapeutic relationships where we're stuck in the same conversation for decades and we can't seem to shift. Psilocybin seems to have a way to give you a new perspective, a new way of seeing. So that's a neural pathway that's opening up. Secondly, this is absolutely fascinating to me. And this is the one that kind of like, it's like a wow, aha. And I learned this. This is Dr. Gould-Dolen, I think her name is. She is at Johns Hopkins right now. And she's researching, and you got to listen to her talk with Tim Ferriss. So if you type in her name, Guldolen, and Tim Ferriss, you'll listen to the most fascinating 2 hours of research on this topic. Now, here's what she's doing. She's using psilocybin to open up what happens in our brain, which is called the critical period. Well, what is the critical period? The critical period happens in the first 2 to 3 years of a human being's development. Our brain is wide open for new learning. So we learn to walk, we learn to talk, particularly for language acquisition. Babies can learn language within years, like with just you can watch them go ba, 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 and then they have a language development and they learn to talk. And it's just marvelous. You watch little kids learn to talk and you're like, look at you. You were dependent. Now you're walking and growing and learning language, right? We call that the critical period. We learn social skills. We learn what's acceptable by mirroring and these kinds of things. What she discovered was that psychedelics open that part of our brain back up to the critical period that we only had locked away, that we thought we could only access from 0 to 3. Now, what does that mean? It means you have about 4 to 6 weeks of a critical period in your brain post psychedelics that you could learn new things. Now, like learn new things like how to drive a car, maybe. What she's learning, she's using it for stroke victims, people that have a stroke, that have no longer have the use of part of their body. They've lost the connection. She will give them psychedelics, and then they start teaching them using therapy to try to get that connection from the brain back into limbs. They're doing this with spinal cord injuries. I've interviewed 2 people while I was part of the film crew that interviewed, I got footage. I'm part of a film that we're doing looking at spinal cord injuries and psychedelics. Now, this stuff is absolutely blowing my mind. Like, this isn't about healing trauma. This is about physically changing the neural pathways from your brain to possible having use of your legs again by using psychedelics to open up this critical period for you learning to walk again or learning to have engagement with your, parts of your body. So this is just understanding, this is brand new. This is about 6 months old, this kind of research, but we're recognizing that psychedelics open this learning up in our brain again, and we can, in essence, set new pathways. One of the metaphors that have been used in the How to Change Your Mind on Netflix is the idea of, imagine you're up on a ski slope and you get off the chairlift at the top of, Whistler, and there's just a fresh blanket of snow, right? In our life, we have all the grooves. We've been going down the same run, the same way. But once we get a new fresh powder, we can make new pathways in our life. That's what the critical period is. It opens you up so you can develop new ways of being you, in your life. And when you work with therapy and work with a therapeutic container, your therapist and your team can help you develop new pathways in your life. So we call that the critical period. So it opens new pathways, it reopens a critical period in our brain. And then thirdly, and this is the one that really kind of has really connected with me so much. This quote is from a book by a number of psychiatrists called A General Theory of Love. So what they say is with our brain, as we're like our new brain, this is as developed mammals. Mammals developed a capacity we called limbic resonance. We have a limbic brain, limbic resonance, a symphony of mutual exchange and internal adaptation whereby two mammals become attuned to each other's inner states. This is called limbic resonance. And this concept is psychedelics seem to enhance limbic resonance, our ability to attune to other human beings and to co-regulate with people. Now, who cares? Why is that important? This is a really key part of it, because what's happened so far in psychedelic research is 2 therapists and 1 individual. So you will be dosed in a lab with LSD or psilocybin, and you'll have 2 therapists in the room, and then they'll help you kind of make new patterns in your life. But what they're missing is this third element of what happens with psychedelics, which is an increase of limbic resonance. Our ability to connect with others goes through the roof. Once we're on a psychedelic, we want to connect with other human beings. We want to be known. We want to be seen. We want to connect with nature. So nature connectedness goes up. Our limbic resonance, this idea of wanting to be seen and heard by other people, goes up. And lastly, a connection to something larger than ourselves, something called call it core self, maybe it's source, divine, whatever you want, but there's a sense that I want to connect with something larger than myself. And for me, the limbic resonance is a key piece that's missing in most of the psychedelic literature out there. We just haven't studied that because we've not done any studies with group psychedelic therapy yet. There's one study done in 1992 at UCLA with 3 people that did psychedelics together, and they dosed them in separate rooms, and then they integrated their integration sessions were together. But that's the only group psychedelic research project that's ever been done on our planet. And so I'm really excited because we have pitched Health Canada to look at this idea of what if we did psychedelics in a group, and we studied that, and Health Canada has agreed and let us do that. And we're going to be starting that in August of this year. And I'll be talking about that later, because I think this is the key missing piece in psychedelic therapy, is the power of group, which is limbic resonance. That's the piece missing. We need to connect with others in order to heal fully. And so that's the third mechanism that is activated. Now, why is group and kind of limbic resonance so important? And I go back to the work of Dr. Bruce Alexander, who's from Vancouver, BC. And he looked at this issue of addiction. And he was looking at of addiction. And this is a very kind of popular experiment that people have talked about. And so I'll just kind of summarize what it is. But the idea was that he had 2 groups of rats. One group were in cages, kind of individual, alone, in kind of cages, and they had access to a drip of a drug. It was morphine or cocaine, and and then one other group was what we called Rat Park, which was a very exciting, playful place where they could all be together. They had places to hide and places to play and things to do and other rats to interact with. And what happened, he also put the same amount of morphine and cocaine in the liquid in that place as well. And what he noticed was that the rats in isolation would drift into a drugged haze all the time because they had nothing else to live for. But the rats in Rat Park was like, we don't need it. It's freely available anytime I want. I could go get the morphine and I could be drugged up, but they would eventually they didn't even use it at all. It wasn't even appealing to them because they were way more interested in the social engagement that they could have in this playful place called Rat Park. Well, what does that actually mean for us? And I would say this, and this isn't my line. It first came from Bruce Alexander, and it's been popularized by other theorists. But the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Let me say it again. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And for me, this is the absolute game changer about psychedelic therapy. We need to help people connect with one another. This is what our culture is longing for. We are isolated, we're alone, and we're dependent upon our technology as a way to stimulate us with dopamine, but we sit isolated behind screens and we're not connecting with others. And psychedelics has this opportunity to actually increase our desire to connect with others. And if we can do this in healthy, safe communities, we can really deal with some of our major mental health challenges and addiction. And so the psychedelics, when they're paired with group work, can become a powerful model to help people get off of some of these incredible destructive opioids and addictions. And so I really think over the next 20 years, the inroads into dealing with the opioid crisis is going to be psychedelic assisted group therapy. That's going to be the kind of the best way for us to deal with this. Now, pick up my story. So I had an individual psychedelic experience one-on-one with a therapist, and it was very profound and really challenging as well. But I realized that there was a piece missing. How can we do this? How can we do this psychedelics when I know that the challenge is connection? We need to find a way to do this. And I found this at Vancouver Island University. They were the only ones in the world looking at group cohorts using ketamine. And so I pulled together a team of physicians and therapists about 4 years ago, and we went over to Vancouver Island University, did their 12-week program called Roots to Thrive. And I just honor Dr. Shannon Dames and Dr. Pam Crisco, who are really pioneering this idea of getting people into group containers, into safe cohorts, and then putting them through a program where they can really look at some of the deep, troubling issues in their life, but doing that with peer support, with facilitations, and then using medicines like ketamine, psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, depending on what the issue might be. And their research was really stunning, right? PTSD, 86% of people coming out screening, no longer screening for PTSD, 79% after 12 weeks, no longer screening for depression, right? These are significant. Generalized anxiety, 91% improvement on generalized anxiety. And so these kind of numbers blew me away. And so after I got out of Roots to Thrive, we did that. We started our own work here out in the Lower Mainland, and we started something called Gathering Groups, which is a model that works to help people get into a group and have a psilocybin experience as a group under the care of therapists and facilitators. And so this is our gathering model. So we call ourselves Gathering Groups. We have a team of therapists now trained. Many of you on this call have been through this. I saw your faces. And so for us, we deliver this as a 12-week online group practice where you're online for 90 minutes once a week, preparing you for 8 weeks for a 2-night in-person sacred plant medicine retreat. That's at our facility out here in Abbotsford. And then you integrate that experience for 4 weeks after back online. And so this incorporates Western science and Indigenous insight and teaching. We are so lucky to have Indigenous teachers gifting us with their teaching, because so much of these ideas come from our Indigenous brothers and sisters about how to use plants to really gain access to your core of your life, right? And so we're really lucky to be in partnership with some of our Stolo brothers and sisters who are helping us in this kind of work. Our program, if you have extended medical, we are getting, it's eligible for that. And we're really proud of, we've run about 43 groups now. And we continue to make it better and better. And we're really excited to finally now have an opportunity to showcase this model. And we have 2 clinical trials that are coming online this fall. One is with someone called Empower Psychedelics in MAPS Canada. And another one is with Therasil, a training organization that we are partnering with as the largest clinical trial ever being done. It's 1,000 people going through psilocybin in a group, in groups across Canada. There's 4 sites, and Abbotsford and Gathering Groups is going to be one of the sites that's going to be doing this. And we're really excited to showcase what a group model, when it's paired with plant medicine in a safe context, can really do to help people shift depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, so many of these challenging disorders that we just haven't been able to penetrate and give a lot of help to. We think we've got a model here that can really help now. That's microdosing. I might wait for this. Microdosing is when you take just a minuscule amount of psilocybin, imperceptible, so you don't even feel it. You take it 4 times a week for 4 days, and then you're off for 3. And this is the largest study being done of microdosing in the world, of 8,000 people. This microdosing study was put on by folks on the Vancouver Island here. You can see some of their names here: Paul Stamets, Pam Crisco, and others that are part of this study. And it's incredibly effective at helping people regulate their mood and even get off of anxiety medication, depression medication. But you need to do this under the watch of please, I just want to say, even if you're going to do psychedelics, a lot of people say, well, I got to get off my, my antidepressant medication, my SSRIs. And I say, please don't. Please stay on your medications as you go through a psychedelic treatment. And then after, you can work with your doctor, your psychiatrist, and taper slowly. This is a real big issue. People wanting to get off of them and then do psychedelics. And that's actually causing a lot of problems, because getting off of these medications that you've been on for 10, 15 years is a very delicate and needs to be under the watch of a therapist. So I just want to put that caveat out there. And then this is kind of my final question here. Is this right for you? Are you informed? Have you done your research around who is this therapist? Where's the retreat center? Are they informed? Are you informed? Is the people that you're working with, are they informed? Are you in a safe setting? This is not a pill you take. This is not a pill. The mechanism of action has to be worked with intention, with therapy. It opens you up. And so what's going to happen is you will feel more, right? This is not a suppressant like alcohol. This allows you to feel more. And if you felt trauma, you're going to have to, who's going to help you contain that? Because that's going to come out, right? These feelings, these depression, anxiety, fear, trauma, these are feeling states that want to be felt through, and they want to be able to leave you. But psychedelics are going to pull them up so you can feel them, so they can leave. But if you are not in a safe setting, this can be a horrible experience, as a lot of this big energy can come up. And if it's not contained by skilled therapists or facilitators, this can be a very difficult psychological journey for you. And so, are you in a safe setting? Are you informed? Do you have intentions? Intentions help you kind of focus a little bit on what you want to get out of the experience. And then, do you want to grow and heal and change, right? I put this graphic up of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. People that do psychedelics are really open to growing, because psychedelics are gonna change you toward growth. And so a growth mindset is one that says, I'm willing to look at my life. I'm willing to take stock of where I'm at, because I'm no longer happy with where my life is at. I want to change. That is such a beautiful starting place for a journey with psychedelics. Is, do you have the desire to change and grow and heal? And do you have the people around you to help you integrate? Because once you come out of this, you are open. You can set new tracks, but very close. And I mean, very close after the world with all of its chaos and busyness, and you got to work harder. And that's going to crowd out all of your growth that you had. And it's going to really, eliminate some of the gains you had. And you kind of be back to square one, feeling depressed again if you do not integrate these kind of insights. And so these are really important questions you need to ask yourself before you sign up for any psychedelic assisted therapy or enter a clinical trial or take a gathering group. And so I think lastly, this is, I just want to put mushroomreferences.com is one of the best sites. It's put together by Paul Stamets, who's the world's probably leading mycologist studying mushrooms around the world. This is my wife, Heather, and I with Dr. with Dr. Pam Crisco and Paul Stamets at his place out in Cortez Island. We got a chance to visit them and hang out. But his website, mushroomreferences.com, is the best website if you want to find any article about mushrooms. It's got hundreds and hundreds of articles, and I really recommend it. His research is really some of the best in the world here on the power of these mushrooms to really help us in this time in our planet. So I want to just play the trailer for this film as just a way to end my talk tonight. This is a film I'm the executive producer of. It's called Dosed, A Trip of a Lifetime. I'm really proud of it. Brought on two young directors that just took it to another level. I started filming my friend Lori Brooks, who was diagnosed with end-of-life cancer. She was given like kind of 6 months to a year to live. And I said to her, Lori, would you be open to doing psychedelics and letting me film you before and after? I want to show what this can do. I think it can really help you. She'd never done any drugs before, and she was really gracious to say, okay, I'll let you do that. And so I started filming her story on what changed in her life. And it was an incredible story. And the story grew to becoming 2 years of filming, brought on these two amazing directors. And I'm really proud of the film. It's been seen over 100 countries. And it's a very powerful film. So it's free. If you want to watch it online, you can go to, just type in Dosed, Trip of a Lifetime. You can watch the whole film. But this is the trailer that just gives you a little feel for the film. And this will kind of end my talk. And the first guy you're going to see is my brother. He's a physician. He's working with us on the clinical trial. His name's Dr. Reg Peters. I'm really proud that I get to do this work with him as well. So this is, I think we can do this here.
Talking to my colleagues, if we get the cancer bulk load down, it might give you more time.
Okay, well, I'm going to just redo that one. Sorry, I'm going to share that.
This will be my 4th surgery in 2.5 years, and I don't.
I'll redo it here in a second.
To be up, I'm sliced and diced again. It's been hard.
Talking to my colleagues, if we get the cancer bulk load down, it might give you more time.
This will be my 4th surgery in 2.5 years, and I don't want to be cut up. I'm sliced and diced again. It's been hard on Glenn and the kids because they feel like I'm okay with dying.
I've often thought, what would be the last thing I'd want to whisper into your ear as you're slowly passing? I'm going to see you on the other side, and we'll be together.
How can you tell someone not to be afraid of death? Because they could look you in the eyes and say, how about you? How would you do if you were facing death?
Not that we can promise everybody a cure, but it does offer people an opportunity that otherwise they don't get.
I talked to you yesterday, you were normal, and now you're talking about mushrooms being sacred? What happened?
Don't worry, I'm not a regular drug user. I've never done it before.
There's quite an underground network producing cannabis oil, and people are breaking the law, but so you would if you were coming up against something like cancer.
You may go into remission, you may not, but your challenge is to enjoy the moment and be grateful
If this is my last year or two on Earth, I want to enjoy my life free of anxiety and the depression and the existential fear and dread. My big worry was, even if I don't survive, are Glenn and the kids going to be okay? It sounds crazy, but I felt like I was in the presence of God, whatever he or she is like. It was just this deep knowledge that everything is going to be all right.
Well, thank you, folks, for tuning in. We're going to open it up to questions. Hopefully that was kind of enough of an overview for those of you who this is brand new. Yeah, I hope that they gave you a bit of a context for where I'm coming from, why I'm so passionate about this kind of work. My wife and I have really kind of pushed all in on this work. We both have quit our jobs and have said we really want to be at the forefront on helping people get access to these healing medicines. So I really believe that Canada stands at the edge where we can really set the bar at the highest level for safe, legal access to psilocybin and these psychedelics to help treat some of these really difficult kind of mental anguish that we just really haven't been able to navigate. And we really think that particularly using the safe structure of a group container can really help people heal. We've been seeing that over the last 4 years through our gathering group model. And now we're excited to be able to give the research that Health Canada wants to see and be able to showcase this is going to be safe, this is effective, and we want this to be accessible to all Canadians. And hopefully we can get like MSP and Health Canada to be covering this so that this is not such an expensive medicine. This should be, as a Canadian citizen, you should demand the right that our healthcare fund these kind of treatments for people. We are working with our first responder population as our number one people that we want to treat first. Because if we can't help our firefighters get healthy, then what are we doing as a country, right? So this is my big passion is no one wants to give us funding right now for this study, right? We have to raise every single dollar on our own for this study. And this is going to cost us $1 million to be able to do this study, but we really believe in it. And we think there's going to be enough Canadians to come around and say, yeah, we believe in this, Peg. Here's $20, here's $50, whatever. We're going to be citizen scientists and help push the needle forward to show Health Canada this is an effective, safe medicine that can really help people. So yeah, let's open it up for whoever wants to ask a question. If you want to ask a question in the chat, we've got one here. What are some of the negative experiences that people had when on their trip? Great question. I think the number one thing that people face is it can be challenging. It's hard, right? And it's hard because we come in with a baggage of 30 plus years of trauma in our life. And we think that, oh, I just want to fix that right now, right? Is there a magic pill? Psilocybin isn't a magic pill. Psilocybin allows you to open up and get access to places in your life that you haven't been able to have access to before, but it's going to take work. And I think the experiences of some of the people that go through our program, everyone would say this is helpful, but a lot of people would say it was really challenging. But the number one thing we get is, I am so glad I did it in a group. I am so glad everyone says this was the key to their own healing, was they felt they weren't alone. They were part of a group of people that all had each other's back, and that no matter what I might have been facing, I have a friend, a colleague that's in this group of 8. They're also facing their own stuff, right? And when you do that, you don't feel alone. The hardest thing on this is when you feel alone and that you're the only one having to navigate that it can be crippling for people. And so to feel like you're part of a team, even when it's challenging, we're like, we've got you, we can hold you, we'll integrate this for you, and so it can be challenging, maybe lots of tears, maybe there's deep grief that has to be experienced, so you let that out, you grieve it, and maybe you need to put up boundaries in your life. Maybe you've experienced sexual assault and you've never ever felt the self energy to be able to boundary somebody, and so in the trip you have an opportunity to access anger and rage for the first time. It's incredibly therapeutic. So although the trips can be challenging, we have therapists, and particularly we're learning that we don't just need therapists. This work is deeply somatic, which means it's deep in the body. And some of the best workers that we bring into our space are RMTs, massage therapists, body workers, people who understand that the body holds trauma, and they can help you lean into places of pain, of tension, and be able to release those physically so that the emotions and the tension gets released at the same time. So this is we're just learning so much about this medicine. This isn't just for the brain. This is for the body. And so sometimes the trips can be really hard. It feels like labor. Some people will say, man, it felt like I've had a lot of moms who've experienced labor. My wife in particular has said, that felt like I was in labor for a couple hours, like excruciating, rocking and almost like contractions. But at the end, there was a sense of birthing something new. And what they were birthing is a new understanding of themselves. And that sounds so weird, but that's exactly how they describe it. So those are some of the challenging experiences. But again, when you're in a safe context with a team that can hold you and understands this and has experience, we can really help you make sense of it and help you move it and integrate it. So yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah. Okay. Steve, yes, Steve, go for it.
Peg, it's so good to see you, and I'm sorry I missed our conversation with Dana on Monday with Brandon from with the BC firefighters. So I'm so excited to be working with you guys moving forward. What's the cutoff to be? You don't have to be diagnosed with anything or like to participate. Like, what's the kind of barriers to get in? Do you have to be fully disordered, or do you just have to have some challenges?
Well, thanks, Steve. And thank you for being here, Steve. I just want to take a minute to say thank you, because it just means a lot that, you're overseeing the mental health of almost 5,000 firefighters in our province. And that is an incredible high bar. And the fact that you're open to looking at innovative medicines like this and saying, let's break the stigma. Let's find ways to help, our firefighters get healthy and whole. I just want to honor you as a leader in that. So thank you so much for your interest in this. As far as the study we're doing, I'm really excited about this because it has three unique aspects of this study. One is it's the largest clinical trial ever done with psilocybin in the planet, 1,000 seats. The last one, the biggest study after that was 33 individuals. So it's not even close. So think of the data points we can get, right? Secondly, there is no barrier to entry. Now that is that's never been done. Health Canada has approved what we call a wellness study. Now this took us 2 years, working with physicians in Ottawa, 2 years to advocate for this approach, because they wanted to say, no, you have to have treatment-resistant depression. You have to have tried electroshock therapy. You have to have tried, look, we've been doing what we call SAP applications, special access permits, and they're getting rejected like crazy because someone hasn't tried electroshock therapy yet. And so we can't give them mushrooms, right? This is really ludicrous. So finally they opened it up and said, okay, we're interested in doing a health study. And so that's really interesting. Secondly, so we've got two studies. One is going to be looking primarily at kind of trauma and how it can heal. And this other one, this large label study, is really looking at wellness. And so that's a really interesting, approach. So this could be, in my dream, wouldn't it be awesome for husbands and wives of firefighters to go in together and do this together as a couple, right? Because so much of trauma comes back into the home, right? It's not just like I'm messed up. It's I'm suffering with this trauma and I have an inability to relate to my children, to my wife. I'm locked away inside. So if we can help that family heal, wouldn't that be beautiful? So it's
Oh.
large, it's got no barrier, and it's group based. And so that to me is a game changer, and that's never been done before as well. Is that we're looking at the power of group when doing these kind of medicines. So I'm really excited about this, and I can't wait to talk to you more, Steve. We can definitely connect after because there's some really exciting things that we're discovering.
Very, very cool. And Pam Crisco and I were just on a call with WorkSafe trying to get them to cover the ketamine assisted piece.
Yeah.
And we're all about group work. We're teamwork people. So that really resonates, man. And we do. Connection is the key piece here. Yeah. So that's been our job. Connect people.
It's music to my ears, Steve. I love it.
I love it, man. So cool.
What Pam and the team is doing with ketamine, I think is just cutting edge. That really setting the bar. They were the ones that really trained me to understand this process. And we've just pivoted to psilocybin and really cut our teeth on using that medicine, which in my opinion, actually does more than ketamine. Ketamine is a great medicine because it's legal and physicians have access to it. But it is a dissociative. So it pulls you out of kind of your embodied experience. Psilocybin is the opposite. It puts you deeper into your body and it puts you deeper into connection. And that's what I want. I want people to feel themselves more and feel more connected. So I'm excited about to try that. Thanks, Steve.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yes, there's a long wait list for individuals at Roots to Thrive. Yes, and the group cohorts are full until October. Are there group programs on Vancouver Island that may not be a 6-month wait list? How do you get into the study? Are there 1,000 people already enrolled? No, we are opening up recruitment in July, and we'll be taking. But we have cohorts that are starting right now, not on the clinical trial. The clinical trial will start in August, but gathering groups is still running what's called a harm reduction model. So that means we have sourced safe grower of psilocybin mushrooms. We've vetted them and tested them. And then you access the mushrooms on your own. They get shipped to our retreat center as a cohort, locked in a safe until you come. You help prepare your own tea here. And this allows us to be under the same kind of insurance as a harm reduction safe injection site. So like, for instance, Insight, which is a safe injection site, has certain criteria they have to follow in order to be legally allowed to do that. We're following the same criteria. So if you want access to psilocybin mushrooms right now, you can get into a gathering group, and we are launching groups all the time. Check out gatheringgroups.ca. And you can sign up, get on our wait list, and we are launching groups about twice a month. And we don't have a wait list, so we're one of the new ones on the market. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you. So thanks for that question. Yeah, other people, hands up or any other question that because I'll keep talking. I love to talk. Anyone else have a question? Ian, yes. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, you gotta unmute. Ian, I'm gonna out you here, but I got to know Ian who came through. Can I out you, Ian? That you did a gathering group? I just told everyone you did. Go for it.
I've actually been there twice, MDMA and psilocybin. And the question I had for you, well, first of all, I should say that thank you very much for the presentation tonight, and your passion for this and your excitement, yours and Heather's, is really very infectious. And I think it's marvelous that you're going to be working on these 2 studies. I wondered about whether there's any role for MDMA if that becomes approved, because especially with the couple work, there's quite a bit of research about the benefits of it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ian, and just so much respect for you, Ian, as one of our top psychiatrists in our province who really understands the power of these medicines. You are really pushing the bar, I think, in your as you know, physicians and psychiatrists can be a very conservative bunch. and the College of Physicians and Surgeons have been really reticent to kind of, what are we going to do with this? But you've been a real voice that says, let's explore this. We can do this effectively and safely. Let's do this. We want to do this for our for people here in the province. So I just want to honor your wisdom and leadership as a psychiatrist, really setting the bar, Ian. So yeah, Ian, let me answer that thing about MDMA. MDMA is a different, it's not a classic psychedelic in the sense that it's a different mechanism of action, but it's kind of been lumped into these psychedelic-like medicines with ketamine, LSD, and psilocybin. But MDMA is more biographical, so it helps you. It's not like cosmic as much. You can have those moments, but it's more about looking at kind of the kind of your own life story. And it really accesses self-love. And I would say that is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing, is that with trauma, you get so isolated and so pulled back that it almost like you feel like there's something wrong with you. And you begin to tell yourself, I'm flawed. There's something wrong with me. And you begin to have this self-hatred and self-doubt that begins to be debilitating. MDMA can open that up so that you can really encounter yourself and realize that you are lovable, that you are not just lovable, but that you are in essence kind of this beautiful being that is not just worthy of love, but is full of love. And so it has this incredible ability to do that. MDMA it needs to be accompanied with a lot of talk therapy. Psilocybin, you do a lot of prep, like we do 8 weeks of prep before you come to the session. And then it's basically eye shades and headphones, and you're down in a kind of an altered state for 4 to 5 hours. And then you come out and integrate. MDMA is a bit different, as you know. You can put eye shades on, but its effectiveness is really in its ability to move away from the fear circuits of our brain, right? The amygdala that sounds the alarm that we're in danger. You can go back to moments of trauma in your life and you're not feeling that fear. So you can really work with a therapist to uncover these moments. And I think one of the most effective things is to work with couples in MDMA, because often with couples, we get into these patterns where it's not our beautiful key core selves that are in these relationships, but our parts that have been wounded. And maybe we've wounded each other. And now we're stuck in these wounds with one another. And they always keep coming up. MDMA can allow you to go back to some of these places of deep wounding. Maybe it's unfaithfulness. Maybe it's an unkind word or something that happened to put a rift in that. You can go back to those on MDMA together with a skilled therapist and be able to find each other and be able to feel the love again for one another and be able to renew your relationship. I mean, that's unbelievable. Think about what that would do for the children in that marriage, right? So to me, MDMA is a beautiful medicine, and I'm really excited that it's probably one of the quickest ones that's going to be legalized because of its incredible power to unlock trauma. But again, it needs to be in a therapeutic container. Kids will take MDMA or Molly, all the time at a rave, right? And that's beautiful too. You can be in 1,000 people at a concert, taking MDMA and just feeling the sense of oneness that you all are bouncing and dancing, and you just feel this love and belonging, but it just fades away after that, right? So MDMA is an incredible molecule when it's combined with a therapeutic action. And I think couples retreats where you can bring couples into these sessions and even use group process with them and then send couples off to rooms to work over things, then come back, because you can talk while you're on MDMA in ways that you can't often with high dose psilocybin. And so you can really access some of these things. So I think the power of group and couple work, as you rightly noted, is just sitting there for us to look at and research. And so I'm excited to start even exploring that for gathering groups to bring in MDMA in some of our retreats as well. So thanks for that comment, Ian. You're a doctor. You know these medicines better than probably anyone I know. What was your experience like, going through some of this stuff? What's shifted for you, Ian, as a physician looking at these medicines? Why do you think that they're so important for us to explore and study right now?
Well, a lot of the work that I've done clinically over the years has been with survivors of trauma, and I'm aware of how long it takes to get results. And it's important to invest that work. But when I see research that shows that lasting and significant changes can occur in a shorter time safely, then I think that's very important to pursue. And not just for first responders and military, but for people with who are survivors of adverse childhood experiences and many other kinds of trauma in life.
Yeah.
So the main appeal has been from that. The experience with psilocybin of having ego dissolution is a very powerful one. And over 50 years ago, I experienced that in not a good setting, and that can be kind of scary.
Yeah.
When I experienced it in the setting in Abbotsford, that was a very positive experience and left me with a lasting impression of not only how that could help me personally, but how it could help patients that I see in the future.
Wow. Thank you, Ian. And so excited that you're going to be helping us unfold this work. It's such beautiful to have advocates like you on our side here. This is such an important work. And we can't, I mean, we're battling big pharma, right? We're battling stigma and big pharma who really are threatened by these kinds of medications, these kinds of plant medicines. And yet we're going to need citizens all across Canada to really advocate this and say, no, it's about time that we open up not just research, but access. And so I'm hoping that, you know, in the next 5 years that this can be a procedure, a model that we can really bring in. And because we've got this group model now that we've developed, it feels like it's a really nice container for this kind of work to happen in. And for us at Gathering Groups, we also have alumni. And so we have alumni programs where after you finish your 12 weeks, you can stay in an alumni group of people who have also had experiences like you. And you can, share and feel a sense of connection and camaraderie with these people who really understand exactly what you experienced. And you don't feel like a weirdo that you're talking about your psychedelic experience and to your other friends or family that just kind of write you off as a weird drug user because they really don't understand, what's going on right now with research. So having this container, this alumni group is really helpful after you finish a 12-week group like this. So so that's, there was a question here about teenagers. Although, Health Canada has said that you have to be 18, minimum of 18 years old to be able to enter the study. I think as we look at some of these medicines in the next 5 years, I think there's going to be some opportunity for us to be able to use these medicines for things like teen suicidality and these kinds of things, particularly ketamine, which is incredibly helpful for suicidality. If you have teenagers that are really struggling, I really recommend, ketamine clinics. My brother has a ketamine clinic here in Abbotsford called Upstream, and they take patients. There are other ketamine clinics around Vancouver Island and others. I know Chi Integrated Health in Vancouver is another beautiful program that they're running ketamine programs as well. So that would be kind of a good start to do. But Krista, thank you. What a beautiful comment here. Krista is taking this, and she just said, after 30 years of many types of therapy, mushrooms have given me a sliver of hope to keep trying to get better. So that's huge for me. Thank you, Krista. That's a beautiful comment. Krista went through a gathering group as well. And she's a first responder as well. It's a start, right? It's not a perfect fix. I'm not claiming that, one shot and you're done. I'm saying that this is going to start the process of healing for you. And as you continue to do the work and find others that can support you, this can really be, help you head in the right direction. Thank you for that beautiful comment, Krista. Yeah, is there anyone else that wants to make a comment or a question? Jennifer, yes, go for it.
Hi there.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for putting this on for us. So I'm an intern therapist. I have my registered psychotherapist qualifying status. And this is the area that I want to get into. But I have a question actually about decriminalization. So, so in BC, personal amounts of hard drugs, such as like heroin, morphine, fentanyl, crack cocaine, meth, and not sure about MDMA though, were decriminalized. I'm not sure about the status now of that. But I'm wondering why classical psychedelics were not included in that. I've been so confused about that. I'm wondering if anyone could shed some light on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, and that shocked me when that came out. I was shocked that those classic psychedelics weren't on that list. I mean, if we need access, I mean, that would have been such a beautiful thing for the BC minister to put those on there, and it would have really allowed us to be able to do this in a beautiful way. But they weren't, and I don't know why. But I think they're really wanting my hunch. This is my hunch, is behind the scenes, I think Health Canada is pushing the provinces to say, don't make any definitive statements on psychedelics. We really want to go through the clinical trial model. We've been trying with some things like special access. Another thing was called a Section 56 exemption, which would give like a provider, access to be able to, prescribe this. But those avenues are really drying up, and they're actually becoming more stringent to be able to give those out. And they're really opening up clinical trials, which allows them to kind of wash their hands a little bit, because they don't have to be responsible. They can say, listen, this is a clinical trial. We're just trying it. So if, someone has that bad experience or whatever, they can say, well, it's a clinical trial. See, we're trying to find this out. So they're really wanting to get the clinical data in Canada on efficacy, health benefits, and what are patient outcomes. And so that's kind of the route they've gone. And so the fact that they're starting to open these clinical trials up is wonderful. However, I wish it would come with funding. I wish they would say, listen, and you can access X number of dollars because sure, you can say, yeah, go for it, but you got to raise $1 million. And it's just my wife and I, we just got kids, and how can we raise $1 million, right? We're not a big company. We're just a bunch of, we're a teacher and an ex-pastor trying to do good in the world, right? So this is really hard work. So we're going to need a consortium of companies, unions, and decision makers to really rally behind this, to say, let's get this clinical trial funded so we can really showcase that these are safe medicines. So yeah, it's a really strange thing that BC did that. But I really want to encourage you, Jennifer, the fact that you're interested in this as a therapist. We need people like you getting trained in this, getting trained on how to hold space, on how to work with these medicines. And it's really important that you find really good training programs that really can give you the kinds of experiences that you really need in order to do this work. And my number one thing is you got to do your own work, right? That's what happens. It's unlike therapy, where you can almost fake it a little bit. I'll just be honest, right? You can kind of stay one step ahead of a client, but with psychedelics, you can't. It's about nervous system regulation. So they will pick up on your anxiety, and that will affect the trip. So you have to have done your own work so that you are grounded and solid and know who you are if you're going to lead anyone in an altered state. And I think there's too many people that are claiming they're shamans now, that they went to an ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica for a day, and now they want to be this big shaman. And that's really scary to me, because this work takes a lot of internal work, and you needed a team approach, multidisciplinary approach, to be able to hold people through these experiences. So I'm excited for you. And if you want, come into a gathering group, we'll train you, and we'd love to have you in our program. So.
One more point I wanted to make really quickly, and that is that I feel sometimes just the doing psychedelics for curiosity, out of curiosity, or to work through a problem that you want to solve, maybe in your career. I think we sometimes forget that psychedelics can be really, really helpful for those things too. And just like I said, just like for fun, even like for fun,
connection,
for curiosity.
Yeah.
And I love
I love
the
that.
concept of doing it in a group too. Thank you.
Yeah. No, Jennifer, what a great line. I mean, this topic today was psychedelics for mental health, but I mean, I have 30 slides on other topics that I'm like, oh, I would love to talk about that one day, right? Psychedelics for spiritual exploration. I mean, that's my passion, right? That's a thing that's really important to me. And I think there's lots of people that would love to use these medicines as a way to, enhance themselves, to connect with the divine in ways. Psychedelics for marriage. I remember talking to Dr. Mark Hayden, who works at Chi Integrated Health now, but he was working for the Center of Substance Abuse, and he's really a pioneer in this field. And I was interviewing him once, and I said, Dr. Hayden, what does good look like in 5 to 10 years? Without skipping a beat, he said, what good looks like is MDMA is available at any time, and that a mother is doing MDMA with their daughter, and a father is doing psilocybin with his son out in the woods. This is what good looks like in Canadian society one day, that we have rites of passage for families to connect using these medicines, because this is what they were used for thousands of years. Families would take them to connect with one another and bond. And instead, we have these fragmented families that don't talk to each other, that have all this bondage and power dynamics and trauma with each other. And they're like, here's this incredible medicine that could really help us heal. So I think so I love that, for fun, for spiritual exploration, for family connection. That's what good looks like one day. So I honor that vision you have, Jen. Thank you so much. Well, it's 8:30. We're going to wrap up here unless there's any other comments or questions. I'm willing to stay on a little longer if anyone wants to just chat. But I just want to, if you are all interested in this, get informed. Check out gatheringgroups.ca, and we have lots of resources on our website, videos. Check out our Instagram. And we are launching groups. We've got 1 or 2 spots actually in a group that launches tomorrow. So if you're really like, get me in right now, we actually have a couple spots in a group tomorrow. So thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. And I really wish you all the best. May you be a little bit kinder and a little bit more present in your day today. Good night. Yeah, if anyone is staying on, I'll stay on. I'm going to just end the recording, and then